Okay, well, I'm going to be also bringing you a sermon today. So sorry you have to hear my voice quite a lot today. Well, I'm sure in this digital age, we've probably all experienced scamming, right? You know, when you get that email and it says, oh, you've won a wonderful prize, or you've paid too much money and you need a refund, and can you supply your bank account details? Or a text, something like that, and you think, what's going on here? Am I being scammed? Even down our road recently, we've had a lot of parcels being stolen that have been left on doorsteps. Everyone nowadays seems to have these doorbells with a camera on. I think we really believe that we live in an era where we have to be more suspicious than ever before. But today's story from 1600 BC shows us that this level of kind of deceptive theft and scamming is really nothing new. Well, so far in our Flawed Faith series, we've heard about Noah, Abraham and Sarah, and today we're looking at the life of Jacob, the next of the Bible greats listed in Hebrews 11. Jacob. My NIV commentary tells me that his name became synonymous for the unsavoury quality of deceptiveness. Now, even before Jacob was born, there were twins in Rebekah's womb that were jostling together, and she received this prophecy from God. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Which seems to imply that it was always God's plan for Jacob to take a position of power, even though we're told that it was Esau who was the strong hunter, whilst Jacob was a quiet man, staying amongst the tents and loved by his mother. Again, my NIV tells me that Jacob was ever the schemer, seeking by any means to gain advantage over others, but it was by God's appointment and care, not Jacob's wits, that he came into the blessing. Interesting. John, how are those slides going? Is it not really working? No? Okay. Maybe we might give out some Bibles then, because we're going to be looking at some passages, if that's okay. Oh, hang on a minute. He's made it work. What a star. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you may well be familiar with the story of Esau and Jacob, especially if you went to Sunday school. That's exactly the kind of story that we used to read about and draw the pictures and, put them all in order and so on. But you may remember, for example, that Rebekah, the mother, favoured Jacob, who was second born, and she spurred him on to coerce his brother out of the birthright and the blessing that was traditionally awarded to the firstborn son. However, we're going to recap the best details, okay? So Jacob's first significant manipulation comes in Genesis 25. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So Esau swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. And so Esau despised his birthright. So here Jacob essentially asked his brother to swap his birthright for some lentil stew he'd cooked. However, we can see that Esau, he agreed, he went along with it. In fact, later, Paul in Hebrews talks about Esau's decision being unholy. I think the passage reads a bit like a teenage angst drama, with an impetuous agreement that emerges out of the ravenous distraction of Esau after he's come in from a hunt. Fast forward many years, and at the age of 40, Esau married 2 Hittite women, whom we were told were a source of grief to his parents, and a daughter of Ishmael, who was Abraham's son born to Hagar, which presumably took Esau out of the line of the grace of God because he intermarried with other religions and family lines. Jacob was unmarried at this time. Let's read his second manipulation in Genesis 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and I don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. And when Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so that I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of her elder son Esau, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father?" "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "Oh, the Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So Isaac proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him and he ate, and he brought some wine and he drank. So he went to him. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. And when Isaac caught the smell of Esau's clothes, he blessed Jacob and said, "The smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed. May those who bless you be blessed." And then Esau turns up, and we can imagine the scene unfolding like an ancient episode of EastEnders, with Jacob, urged on by his mother, gleefully sneaking away with the birthright, Isaac's rage and Esau's despair when they discover how they've been tricked. But there are a few interesting things to note in this story. For example, in verse 20, when Jacob asked, Isaac asked, how on earth did he manage to get the meal together so quickly? And when Jacob lies, he is calling God your God, i.e. he's saying to Isaac, it's your God. So at this point, Jacob has not yet sworn allegiance to God for himself. Secondly, in verse 27, the betrayal takes place, and if you remember from the way I read the story, after Isaac has paused 3 times in suspicion, it takes place with a kiss. So he went and kissed him, which foreshadows the betrayal of Jesus by Judas in the Garden of Gethsemane. Well, poor Esau got the very raw end of the deal with no blessing left. Rather, he received a curse to dwell away from the earth's riches and live by the sword, serving his younger brother. And Esau was so incensed that he vowed to kill Jacob. The end of Genesis 27 sees Jacob sent to the people of Rebekah's brother Laban with the express intention for Jacob to flee to safety and not to make the same mistake as his brother Esau did in marriage. As he goes on his way, Jacob receives a second blessing from his father. So here Isaac says to him, "May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you've become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land God gave to Abraham." Well, we're to understand that deathbed requests had legal force in ancient law. And by the custom of the time, Isaac was obliged to follow through with that birthright blessing. And so deceptive Jacob carries on the family inheritance from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob as the new father of nations. And on his journey to Laban's people, Jacob has the dream in which God himself repeats the blessings. That's the dream that we might associate with Jacob's ladder, if you know that story. And again, the blessings that he's received from his father are really added to here by the Lord. We're going to read this as well, okay? So this is where Jacob finally kind of declares his own allegiance to God. When he reached a certain place, Jacob stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I've done what I've promised you." When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid, and he said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I've set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth." So this passage shows us that God really is willing to completely overlook what we would see in Jacob as lying and deception of the most cruel kind, tricking his twin brother of his rightful inheritance for his own selfish gain. But perhaps God is giving Jacob another chance, because this dream is really Jacob's turning point. This is the first time we witness Jacob in awe of God. And I noticed that a lot of the songs Jeff chose for us this morning were about being in awe and wonder of our amazing God. This is the first time we see Jacob honouring God as he places the altar stone, and thinking of giving something of his own away as he talks about giving a tenth, giving a tithe back to God. So he's really committing himself to God. Well, when we look back over our own tapestried lives, maybe we can see some shady moments of our own. Perhaps something we accidentally or even knowingly did that we now realise was wrong. We might even have realised at the time. And if God's pattern with Jacob was to extend blessing to him in spite of his wrongdoing, we must assume that he will do the same for us. Just take a moment now and let's allow God to bring anything to the surface for us which he's maybe asking to be laid down. So I'm just going to give a pause as we ask the Lord to bring to mind things that he might be asking us to lay down before him. I encourage you to take some time today to pray, maybe with somebody else as witness, and let the Lord bring forgiveness to you and extend again his blessing. Well, there's a lot to Jacob's story that follows him accepting God as his own God. Jacob had to work for 7 years to earn his marriage to his cousin Rachel, only to find that he had been tricked into marrying the older sister Leah, a taste of his own medicine. And then he's required to work a further 7 years to marry Rachel, eventually ending up with 2 wives and their 2 maidservants, Zilpah and Bilhah, who between them will become the mothers of his 12 sons and a daughter, Dinah, who isn't listed here, I'm afraid. Couldn't find a genealogy with Dinah in it too. So it seems that Jacob is not alone in this practice of trickery and deception. He gets as much from his uncle, father-in-law, Laban. And in the end, Jacob flees with his wives, children, and a share of the herds he has tended, and he's pursued by Laban to have them returned. In Genesis 31, we read Jacob's justification for his escape in this statement of defense, as he says to Laban, "I've been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore that loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you for 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands and rebuked you." Now, Laban's answer was to suggest a covenant and agree before God a physical boundary between the lands that they would occupy going forward. A witness that I will not go past this heap of stones to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this pillar to my side to harm me. Sometimes our conflicts and difficulties come from taking on too much responsibility for something that isn't ours to carry. or maybe from expecting others to give us more than they can manage. And in these cases, setting a clear boundary can really help resolution. If that's something that you find hard, I can really recommend a Christian book on the subject, Boundaries, by Henry Cloud. It's very, very, very good and quite an easy read. So the final part of Jacob's story that I want to consider today is in Genesis 32. And by this time we see a very changed man with renewed humility and ways of negotiation. Jacob is preparing to make peace with his brother Esau. And this is how he does it. Firstly, he gives fair warning, sending a message that I may find favor in your eyes, he says. Secondly, he prays to God. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed the Jordan. Save me, Lord, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me. Thirdly, Jacob prepares a peace offering in the form of cattle and sheep, goats, camels and donkeys, which he sends on to Esau ahead of himself. Not sure that we have lots of those kinds of things, but you get the picture. And fourthly, overnight he's pursued again by God, this time in the form of a powerful man who wrestles with him and renders his hip out of place, physically weakening him. And it's in this encounter that Jacob is renamed Israel, which could have left him feeling arrogant and victorious. But instead, what we notice is his humility and deference to God. Before we go on to read that final short passage, it's worth asking ourselves whether we can pick up any tips from Jacob's experience if we ourselves have someone that we need to reconcile with. So we'll just read the last little bit from Genesis 32. This is Jacob's encounter with the powerful man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob." No longer be deceptive, right? But Israel. Because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, Why do you ask my name?" And then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. Jacob himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around him, around his neck, and kissed him. And they wept. It's a happy ending. What strikes me here is the change of attitude that we see in Jacob, a man to whom life has been both cruel and generous. At one time, he relied on his own resources to capture wealth and blessing. But here we see him communicating clearly, praying honestly for God's help, giving generously, acting humbly, in order to reconcile with his brother at least 2 decades after his original deception. Well, I wonder if, like me, you may be seeing Jacob in a different light as we've delved into his life. I would go so far as to say we have much to learn from his story, from the way that God's plans trump human scheming, to the humility and the practical steps Jacob came to learn for healthy reconciliation. But perhaps above all, Jacob's testimony is to the God who pursues us in spite of our human flaws, always showing his faithfulness and desire to extend blessing over us. Amen.